What I'd like to do in this tutorial is show you how you can access a previously created Stata dataset. What we'll do is simply come up to the menu that is labeled File, left mouse button if you're using a PC to open up the list of options under that menu. I'll come down to Open, left mouse button to open that up. And now what this brings me to are the various directories that I have access to with my computer. What I'm going to do here is click first of all on just the computer icon, and I'm running Stata off of a university server, so the file structure is a little more complicated than what you will have if you are running Stata off the machine where your files are stored. So I clicked on that computer icon there to the left. I'm going to click and drag down, and the way it works, the server I'm using right here is I'll click on the local disk. C: indicates the local disk for my computer that I currently have my data on, that I'm accessing the server with. Left mouse button to highlight that, and then I'll click on the open button. And it may take me for a moment or so. And what it's doing here is now interacting with the university server, and I'm going to permit all access. I want to read data files from my hard drive and also then be able to write back to my hard drive any changes in the data set or any output that I want to save. Now if you again are using Stata that's installed on a local computer, let's say your desktop or your laptop at home, you don't need to go through that first stage we went through. What it probably will do is bring you up then to your My Documents menu. I still have to go through a couple more steps. I've got to find out where My Documents menu is on my laptop here, and so I'll double click on Users, come down to find my username, double click there, and right now it's brought me to my desktop. And now I see My Documents. So I'll double click on that to open it up. Now this is if you're using the software that's installed on a machine at home. This is likely where it's just going to open up for you all right away when you use the open command. Right here in My Documents. And in that case you may have saved some Stata data sets, Stata data files you want to look at in some of the subdirectories off of your My Documents folder. In that case, you would just continue to go through the subdirectories to get to where your data is stored. And what I see right here is the data auto. Now, if we scroll across, you'll notice that under file type, it is a Stata data set. Stata assigns the file extension .dta. So DTA indicates that it is a Stata data set. And you notice it has the icon here that looks almost like it's a spreadsheet to indicate again that it's a Stata data set. Now the auto data set is a data set created by Stata for demonstration purposes, so you can access it from their website, which I've done here. I'm just going to use my mouse and highlight that data file by doing a left mouse button. You notice the file name now appears in the box next to file name down below, and now we'll click on the open button, and you see now first of all the use command is what was executed to open up a data set in the output window. And you notice then what I see here is the file extension auto.dta, where my data set is stored. And you notice below that 1978 automobile data. So when they created this data set, they created that little label then that displays to indicate right after the use command to indicate what the data are. Now that we've opened up the auto data set in Stata, let's take a look at the data itself. What we notice here in the window up to the upper right hand part of the screen, the variables are listed that are contained in the data set. So you notice that there is the variable make, the variable price, MPG, reg 78, all the way down through to foreign, which refers to the car type. So the data set, the variable name rather, is listed first, and I try to keep those variable names if I'm creating a data set. So they're around 8 characters or less. What we see here then next to that is the variable label. So we notice the variable make is the make and model of the car. The variable price is simply the price. The variable MPG is mileage. The variable rep 78 is repair record for 1978. All the way down through, we see that the gear underscore ratio variable is the gear ratio for the car. And lastly, foreign is the car type, whether it's foreign or domestic. Now, if there happened to be additional information or the variable labels were rather long here, what you'll find then that there would be a bar here down the bottom that would allow us to scroll across. If we happen to have more than the number of variables that can be displayed within this window, you would see then off to the right hand side of the screen, somewhere about here, would be another scroll bar that would allow us to scroll up and down throughout the data set itself. Now when we click on one of the variables up here in this top window, you notice what we see down in the bottom window. The properties of that particular variable then are displayed. Let's click on the variable foreign. Now you see the notion of the variable name of foreign, car type, and we can scroll down here to see the other information that's associated with this. Now when we do this and highlight a particular variable here, sometimes if we have value labels that are associated with that variable, we'll be able to see what those value labels are below. So that's how we can then look at information for the data set one at a time. Another way we can take a look at the data itself in terms of what are the variables, what are the variable labels, and information about the variables is with the codebook command. So what I just did here is now I use the left mouse button on my PC to click in the command window, and I will simply type in the command codebook. Now with that command typed in, I'll hit enter, and it's going to execute then that command. Now it did it all at once, and you saw that that whole entire output is displayed here in this output window. Let me scroll back up to where the command was actually executed, and you notice now I see codebook command has been executed. When we're looking in the output window, we'll see that the command that was just executed is displayed. To the left of that will be a space and then a period. So we didn't type in the period or the space. Obviously, we just typed in the command, like we see here. The period, space, and then codebook. And following or just below that command then that we see that's reproduced within the output window is the output from that command. And so we notice then the first bit of information here is information for the variable make, the make and model, and notice it gives examples of what that information is. We then see the price, and it gives basic descriptive information about the price, in that we see the mean is 6,165. Standard deviation is 2,949, and you notice that there are the various percentiles are listed there as well. The same thing for miles per gallon. And as we scroll down, you notice here that we have a variable that is the repair record. And what we see here is the number of repairs for each automobile on average, it looks like, for the year 1978 model. And it presents then the frequency distribution. So that must be a variable clearly then that only has 5 values. Headroom, trunk, weight, the length, turning radius, all the way down we see in this data set then for the last variable, foreign. So that's one way then in which we can actually see what all the information is for each additional variable. And the nice thing about using a codebook command then is I can actually save or print up this codebook and keep it off to the side in case I need to come back and refer to it from time to time. So we can use the codebook command to look at all the information for a particular data set for all the variables. Now, if I wanted to look at the codebook command, the information for only one particular variable, I could simply type in codebook space, and then I can go up here and click on one of the variables to highlight it, click a second time, or double click I should say rather, and you notice now it is reported down here, price. Let's say I wanted to do two variables at one time. Again, move my cursor up in the variables list window, double click on one of those variables, in this case trunk, and now I've selected only two variables that I want to view the codebook information for. Hit enter to execute the command, and we see then the command codebook price trunk, what's after the codebook, that command itself, the list of variables, and now it reports then the codebook information that's stored in this data set for the variables price and trunk. So that's one way in which we could get information about this data set. In addition to using the codebook command, we can also use the describe command. So I'll type in describe in the command window and hit enter, and you notice it provides a basic output of the information that is saved along with the variables. And this really is reporting the information that I could see if I looked at it one variable at a time by just clicking on one of these variables up here in this part of the window. It would be displayed down here. Now I can, as I did with codebook, I can type in describe for only a couple of variables. And a moment ago I double clicked on the variable name up in the variable list up here, but what I can also do is just simply type in the variable name. Let's do, in this case, MPG, and also space, and I'll type in then weight. Once you've laid out your list of variables, then just go ahead and hit enter, and it executes the command. And we see the command was just executed, describe MPG and weight, and now we see the information below that in the output window. So that's how then we can describe only certain variables. If I don't have the variable list after the command name, it then lays out that information for every single one of the variables in the data set. Now if we look off to the window off to the left hand side of the Stata screen here, we notice then we have executed 4 different commands. First, the use command to open up a data set. 2, the codebook command with no variable specified, so all of the variables were reported. 3, the codebook price trunk that reported then the codebook information for only the variables price or trunk. 4, describe, and that 4th command then just laid out basic information about each variable for the entire data set because no variables were specified after describe. And lastly, the 5th command we just executed is describe space MPG space weight, and that provided the descriptive information for the variables we see here for only the variables MPG and weight. And so what we see in terms of this window off to the left hand side of the Stata screen are the commands that have been executed. Now if we wanted to execute a command again, let's say I wanted to go back to and highlight the execute the codebook price and trunk command again, I just merely move my cursor on top of that particular command and left mouse click, and there we see then that command is displayed again within the command screen. In that case, all I need to do to execute it now is hit the return button once more. And so that's how we can then execute previously executed commands that we've seen in the past. Or let's say I wanted to execute that command again, but now I want to add one more variable to that codebook information, not just price and trunk. Let's say I also wanted to report information for the variable foreign. So I've just gone in and added the variable name foreign after price and trunk and hit enter. So we can modify a previously executed command if we want to execute it a little differently. So this is how we get basic information about the variables within the data set that we're using. The last thing I'd like to do in this video is to show you not just how to view information about the variables that are contained within the data set that you're looking at, but also to display the variable itself, or the information rather, for these variables. What do the data actually look like? And what we'll do is come up here towards the top where we see two buttons. One is the data editor button. If we click on this, it will open up the data set, and we can actually, and it'll look like as though it's a in a spreadsheet format, and we can go in and modify the data set if we want to. I tend not to modify data once it has been entered, but what we can do though is just look at the data and not worry about accidentally modifying it by clicking on the button then to the right, where we see a little spreadsheet, looks like the icon with a magnifying glass on top of that. That's the browse window for the editor button. So I'm going to left mouse click, and what we see here, the data is actually been opened up, and I'm just going to make it a little smaller so we can now bring it into our screen here for the video. And right there is the data editor browse button. Now you notice, first of all, we have this scroll bar that allows us to scroll up or down, and we can see all the different cases. There are 74 cases here. As we scroll across, we can see all the different variables. Foreign is the last one, all the way through to make for the very first one. And what we see are the actual data points. Now I do see that there are a couple of cells here for the variable repairs 78 or rep 78, and that indicates missing data. So Stata uses periods for designating missing data for a variable. Now the information that is contained in red, or displayed in red rather, that is also right justified, are the actual value labels for a particular variable. In this case, the variable make. So we see there case 53 is Audi 5000. The Pontiac Sunbird is just above that in case 52, and so on. Also, what we can do is we can scroll across, and you notice that the information that is numeric information will be in black, and the numbers are right justified. Come all the way to the side, and what we see here then is the information foreign. That also is a character alphabetic variable here. It's also right justified, but it is displayed in blue. Now, the information that we saw a moment ago, the very first variable that's in make, that is displayed in red, that actually are the values that were entering for each one of those cases. What we see off to the far side, where we see the variable foreign that's in blue, these are the value labels that were assigned to numeric information that was entered. So if I click here on the value for foreign rather, for case 42, it has a value label of domestic. Look in the shaded box just above the data, and you see the number 0. So the number 0 was entered in as numeric data, but a value label of domestic was assigned to that, and that's what's displayed here, the value label. If we come down to one of the cases that has a value for foreign, that's displayed here. If you notice in the box up above it, the number 1 was entered. So the difference between the domestic and foreign versus what we saw, the red entries or words in the very first variable make. For make, the red indicates these were the values that were typed in, not as numeric, but as alphabetic information. When we see here information here that's right justified rather, and is in blue words, that represents or indicates labels that were assigned to numeric information that was reported, that was entered into the data set. In this case, in values of 0s and 1s. So that's how you can take a look at the actual data set itself and move around in it. I'm going to close now the data editor browse button, or window rather, and now we're back to where we were before. So now you have a sense as how you can open up a data set in Stata, how you can see what variables there are within the data set and get basic information about those variables using the codebook and describe commands, how we can then see the list of commands that have been executed in a particular Stata session, and actually we execute one of those commands without having to type them in all over again, and how we can actually look at the actual values and the data that was entered by using the Data Editor browse button.